This video is brought to you by MyHeritage. In March of 2025, the United States unveiled the F-47 fighter jet, the Air Force's first new 6th-generation combat aircraft shrouded in secrecy and promise. But if you've been around the aviation block, you've known all about this jet for some time. The NGAD, or Next Generation Air Dominance Fighter program, has been floating around in the media for years now. It was speculated that a prototype was already complete and even tested in secrecy, but then a big slap in the face arrived in December of 2024 with the Chinese actually showing to the world not one, but two different aircraft prototypes in flight, proving that they had first got a 6th generation aircraft. The media then went crazy, and an American response was expected from the other side of the ocean. An aircraft that would not only be the most technologically advanced jet fighter ever built, but would also prevent the Chinese dominance from continuing, and potentially save the aircraft builder Boeing from complete annihilation. This is the story behind the mysterious, incredible, and all-new Boeing F-47. So what do we know about the F-47? If we take a really close look at the 3D render, which you've probably seen 100 times by now, there's actually quite an interesting detail to note: canards. And even though we can't say for sure that this is a final design and what the actual F-47 will look like, there is an interesting story behind this design decision. There is a thing called the X-36, built in the late 90s as a testbed for next-generation fighter technologies that looks surprisingly similar to the render that we've seen. And do you know what's funny? The X-36 was actually built by none other than McDonnell Douglas, which was later acquired by, you guessed it, Boeing. The X-36 was created as a concept of a new fighter jet that would not feature vertical stabilizers, one of the key elements that increases the radar cross-section of an aircraft. So if you get rid of that, it would be far more stealthy. And apart from reduced radar cross-section, this new design would also improve maneuverability, range, and remove weight from the aircraft, because you haven't got a tail on the end. And the X-36 was actually quite a success. It performed a total of 31 flights, giving valuable information to the engineers, and since it was a scaled-down prototype, it was also unmanned, but controlled from the ground. Now fast forward 25 years later, and we can say with fair certainty that the F-47 would be tailless, just as the new Chinese jets, because this is simply the new optimal design for a modern fighter aircraft. However, in those 25 years, there were several other X-planes in development. So instead of the X-36 being a prototype from the past, there's actually been several other X-planes in between, as revealed by former Air Force Secretary Frank Kendall. The Air Force has been working on a brand new next-generation fighter aircraft for several decades, with both Boeing and Lockheed having their own X-plane technological demonstrators, which flew back in 2019 and 2022 respectively. Now we know that these twin designs were not finalized production models for evaluation, like the X-35 or the YF-22, predecessors of the F-35 and the Raptor respectively, but rather they were just technological demonstrators, being the final iterations of this X-plane technology. So where exactly does that leave us with the F-47? Well, the F-47 will have a focus on speed, combat radius, and further radar cross-section reduction, as well as have the ability to work in collaboration with drones, which are going to perform the role of either force multipliers or complete certain part of the mission, while the F-47 pilot can focus on the main objective, such as screening, scouting, or other sort of black ops activities. The long game, of course, is that the F-47 would become its own standalone unmanned platform that is either piloted from the ground or piloted by an AI. But this AI stuff is too far-fetched at this point, and it's also the plot of that stealth movie that came out in the past, which I'll let you enjoy in your own time. What the F-47 is definitely going to have in its favour is its systems. It's very likely that the US Air Force will use this as an opportunity to upgrade its radar and suite of electronics and sensors to the best possible available technology. And this shouldn't be much of a challenge considering in mind the state-of-the-art technology that we see on even the F-35, which is still unmatched in the world. But the development of things such as a photonic radar might change the air warfare forever, so I can't wait to see what's cooking into the future. The main armament of the F-47 is going to be long-range radar-guided missiles, but they're also still in development and very hush-hush. There are several projects ongoing, and time will show the exact missiles that are going to be the tip of the spear of this new aircraft, but they'll probably have a range of at least 200 or perhaps 300 kilometers that will be able to shoot over the horizon, which is one of the key requirements for the future of air warfare. Initially, the idea behind the NGAD was to become a replacement for the F-22 Raptor, but this program has now evolved to sort of the role of a quarterback for the Air Force, with the F-47 controlling the collaborative combat aircraft, in short drones, in combat. Of course, air dominance will remain one of the priorities for this fighter as well, but it's that multi-role aspect that they're chasing. So we may actually end up seeing a twin-seater version of the F-47 because instead of a traditional role of the weapon system officer at the back of the plane, we may now have a second pilot focusing on drone combat instead. And we also know that the F-47 might only be the first iteration of the NGAD program, further cementing that this aircraft could see several different evolutions, maybe some of them unmanned, into the future. Now, of course, all of this technology and all of these posturing is to deter the Chinese in the Pacific, who we know is bringing their own version of a 6th generation aircraft to the fore. So it'll be very interesting to see their reaction now to this new aircraft. But it's not all hunky-dory, because there is yet another looming threat over the NGAD program as a whole and the F-47 as its main product, and that's the cost. As Kendall said, this aircraft is expected to be at least twice the price of an F-35, and even higher, having in mind that it probably won't be an export aircraft like the F-22, which could then push the price into several hundred millions just for a single aircraft, because they can't make it up with international sales. So let's now go into the timeline of events and see exactly how we got here, and what's with all the politics behind this program. Sometimes to look forward to the future, we also need to look backwards. As we know, the F-47 owes its namesake to the original Republic P-47 Thunderbolt, a beautiful plane with a rich history. But did you know that you yourself has a rich history too? Thanks to our sponsor MyHeritage, the #1 family history service, you can discover your own roots, your own extended family, and how you're part of that legacy. Yes, I'm Nick, I'm the voice behind Found and Explained, and I'm so excited to show you how simple and easy it is to use. First of all, you add your parents' and your grandparents' names and date of births, and that's it. MyHeritage will search 33 billion historical documents and find the records, and show you the journey going back generations. Look how far back my family tree goes. It was fascinating to find out about my family's origins. I actually never really knew where they were from in Ireland, where they actually lived in Cork, where they worked, and where they're buried. Getting that information was unreal. Plus, they even had photos of my great-great-grandfather and mother, who look wild to say the least. This is our great-great-grandmother. And the best part was showing the family tree to my brother, and using the map we could trace the slow journey of our family from Cork to Melbourne and then to Sydney, Australia. Fascinatingly see who joined our family along the way. This has brought us closer to our past and closer together to something greater. It looks crazy, right? Like, so if I grew this out, I would look just as crazy. Right? So don't wait, discover your past on MyHeritage, and who knows, maybe you and I are even related. I can't wait to find out.
There's no other nation. We know every other plane. I've seen every one of them, and it's not even close. This is a next level.
The road to the F-47's reveal has been a long and secretive one, marked by speculation and intrigue. The origins of the program trace back to the mid-2010s when the Air Force began the conceptual studies for a penetrating counter-air platform to succeed the F-22. By 2018, it was relabeled into the Next Generation Air Dominance Fighter and had formally taken shape as a complete program aimed at fielding a 6th-generation fighter with drone wingmen. Hints of progress emerged in September of 2020 when officials disclosed that a full-scale NGAD demonstrator had already been flown in secret trials. For aviation watchers, this was a bombshell. A prototype 6th-gen fighter, built by an unknown company, was now soaring in the shadows whilst the world's attention was on existing jets. Over the next few years, rumours swirled about who was behind the NGAD prototypes and what they looked like. Defense forums buzzed with purported codenames and sightings. One persistent rumor spoke of a Boeing experimental aircraft dubbed the Voodoo 2, allegedly a demonstrator for both the Air Force's NGAD program and the Navy's FA-XX program. Others speculated that Lockheed Martin's famed Skunk Works had its own advanced prototype in testing. The competition was believed to be a 2-horse race, or possibly 3-horse race if Northrop Grumman's efforts were included, between America's top fighter makers. All of this unfolded behind a veil of classification with no official confirmation, with only tantalizing hints. We now know that these rumors were actually true, with those 2 X-planes being flown by both Boeing and Lockheed, although we probably won't see them publicly for many years. In 2023, the NGAD program faced a crossroads. The cutting-edge technology promised by this 6th-gen fighter came with a daunting price tag. Reports emerged that the projected cost per NGAD jet had soared to triple the cost of the F-35, prompting concerns in the Pentagon. So in May of 2024, Air Force Secretary Frank Kendall ordered a pause on the program to review its necessity and affordability. But then, as we know, on December of 2024, there was a shock in the aviation community when the Chinese revealed that they were developing their own versions of 6th-generation aircraft, thus pressing America to finish up on the NGAD program to counter this new threat. With the program's value now affirmed, anticipation grew that a contract award was imminent. Observers knew that at least 2 teams, Lockheed Martin and Boeing, had been fighting for the highly lucrative NGAD prize. Lockheed, the builder of the F-22 and F-35, was seen by many as the favourite due to its track record in stealth fighters. Boeing, however, had reportedly invested heavily in a dark horse bid, pouring billions into new facilities and design work in hopes of an upset. And that's something that I want to talk about a little bit later on in the video with some tinfoil on my head, because it is mighty strange that Boeing would pour billions of dollars into a new factory when they weren't 100% sure that they had won the bid. But I'll get to that into a moment. Let's talk about the 2 different concepts. There was talk that Lockheed's concept was a ultra-advanced but expensive battlecruiser of a fighter, whereas Boeing was more of a compact design aimed at affordability. These theories suggest that the Air Force might choose a slightly less ambitious jet if it meant they could buy more of them, a philosophy that, in retrospect, appears to have been accurate. Particularly if you look back at the past of the F-22, whereas the Air Force wanted around 700 of the aircraft, but only received just over 100. So perhaps this time round, they're going to go with a cheaper per aircraft basis to ensure that they can get as many as possible. In the weeks before the announcement, tantalizing leaks hit the press. On March of 21st, 2025, just hours before official word, media reports indicated that the Pentagon was set to announce the NGAD contract winner that day. And that leaves us to the historic reveal at the White House, where President Donald Trump, flanked by Defense Secretary Hegseth and Air Force brass, announced that Boeing had won the contract to build this new fighter. In a televised Oval Office address, Trump proudly unveiled the jet's official name, the F-47, a designation chosen in part of honor with the legacy of the World War II era P-47 Thunderbolt and the Air Force's founding in 1947. And also, not coincidentally, Trump is the 47th president, a fact that he noted with a grin on his face as he revealed the name.
At my direction, the United States Air Force is moving forward with the world's first 6th-generation fighter jet. Nothing in the world comes even close to it. and it'll be known as the F-47. The generals picked a title.
The announcement confirmed what had been rumored, that Boeing had beat Lockheed Martin for the NGAD's program prime contract, a stunning upset in the fighter jet world. It also revealed that the engineering and manufacturing development contract for the F-47 is worth over $20 billion to start, and could lead to hundreds of billions of dollars in production orders over the life of the program. The F-47's first official flight is expected to be by the late 2020s, aiming to enter service in the 2030s. For aviation enthusiasts, it was a day when speculation ended and reality began. The F-47 was official, and Boeing was at the helm of America's next great fighter. And this choice may have just saved Boeing from complete annihilation. Boeing's triumph in securing the F-47 contract reverberated across the aerospace and defensive industry. For Boeing, this is nothing short of a lifeline. The company's defense unit, particularly its fighter aircraft division in St. Louis, has struggled in recent years and faced an uncertain future, relying on the F-15EX and Super Hornet Block 3 as their only sources of income. Without a new program, Boeing risked being squeezed out of the fighter market entirely in the 2030s, leaving Lockheed Martin as the sole supplier of US high-end fighters. And the investor reactions were immediate. Boeing's stock jumped by 5% with the news, reflecting optimism that this was a much-needed win, and it could rejuvenate the aerospace giant. For Boeing's workforce in St. Louis, the F-47 program is the savior. It secures high-tech engineering and manufacturing jobs and justifies billions of dollars that Boeing has invested in this new production facility, hoping for this outcome. Industry watchers noted that Boeing actually bet big on the NGAD program, spending internally to ensure that it had the tech ready. And this bet has paid off big, with Boeing Defense CEO Steve Parker highlighting that Boeing made the most significant investments in the history of their defensive business in preparation for the NGAD program. And of course, we all know that Boeing has people in Washington to help them secure and bid for these programs. And you've got to wonder, how early did Boeing know that they were going to win this program, and did it come with the condition that they would actually upgrade these facilities to be prepared for it? Now, I don't want to say anything on a public YouTube video which could be seen by Boeing investors and then make its way to Boeing lawyers, so this is completely my opinion, but it is very suspicious that Boeing won this contract and already had all the tech in place. We'll get into it a little bit later why it's actually a good thing for the industry that Boeing has won this contract, but I do find it kind of very interesting that they were able to invest so much money into their facilities for a contract that was seemingly up in the air, with Lockheed being the favorite. So I'll let you guys down in the comments tell me if you think that's just a little bit sus. Now, Boeing will not only build the F-47 for the Air Force, but it will also likely lead to the development of its accompanying drone systems, its maintenance networks, and its future upgrades, an ecosystem of work that could be worth hundreds of billions of dollars over the program's life cycle. For Lockheed Martin, Boeing's win was a sharp blow. Lockheed's stock tumbled nearly 7% on the announcement, as investors digested the fact that the company, known for its F-22 and F-35, had been bested in a contest for the next big fighter. In an official statement, Lockheed Martin expressed disappointment but professionalism. While disappointed with this outcome, we're confident that we delivered a competitive solution. We will await further discussions with the US Air Force. It's not known at this stage if Lockheed's going to contest this result, but I have a feeling that they're just going to take it in their stride. This loss came on the heels of other setbacks for Lockheed, with just weeks earlier the Navy had eliminated Lockheed from its next-gen fighter competition, narrowing the race to Boeing and Northrop. Additionally, Lockheed has been under Pentagon pressure due to delays in upgrading the F-35. But from a broader perspective, many analysts see the strategic logic in the Air Force's decision, not just from a technical standpoint, but from an industrial base viewpoint. By awarding the NGAD to Boeing, the Pentagon keeps at least two major fighter aircraft manufacturers alive and healthy, with over-reliance on one defensive firm being a serious concern. Had Lockheed won the NGAD as well, it would eventually be the only player building advanced fighters, since Northrop had moved on to the B-21 bomber, and its stealth experience wasn't really tapped into since the YF-23 in the early 1990s. The F-35 program had already shown the downsides of a single supplier for a tri-service fighter. The cost and scheduling issues with no alternative supplier to turn to had risen to astronomical heights. Now, Boeing's success ensures competition in the high-end fighter space, and this competition can spur innovation and help control costs in the long run. And when America turns to build a new fighter jet, there's going to be a ton of engineers who can step up to the challenge. However, the flip side is that the Air Force's choice does consolidate a huge new responsibility with Boeing, a company that, candidly, has had a rough track record lately. Boeing's defensive side has been notorious with its cost overruns on projects like the KC-46 Pegasus tanker with over $7 billion in overruns, and those new Air Force One jets at a $2 billion loss. Its T-7A trainer jet and MQ-25 drone have also suffered testing delays. And on the commercial side of Boeing, we know that they're still recovering from the 737 MAX crisis. These struggles have led to questions about Boeing's program management, and thus, as celebratory as the NGAD win is for Boeing, it comes with intense scrutiny. Lawmakers such as Senator Kelly and defensive officials have explicitly warned Boeing that they must deliver on time and they must deliver on budget. And there's a lot at stake. The Air Force cannot afford the NGAD to falter. In essence, this contract is both a golden opportunity and a massive test for the Boeing defense business. The company's future standing in defense will be defined by how well it executes the F-47 program. In Wall Street terms, Boeing got its much needed boost, while for Lockheed, which has long dominated the fighter arena, it's a humbling moment prompting reassessment of its next moves. So what is going to be the future of the F-47 program from here? One of the first questions that everyone had when this announcement was made: why a manned aircraft in the late 2020s when drones ruled the sky? Well, as we said earlier, the F-47 program does include drones, but it still centers on a human pilot in the cockpit. However, a future unmanned variant of the NGAD may be developed once trust in AI is sufficient, and there may even be an iteration between these two with an aircraft operated by a pilot from the ground. Another scenario is that if a conflict broke out in the late 2020s before the F-47 were fielded, the Air Force might rush some of the NGAD's supporting systems, like drones and weapons, into service early. They've already tested prototypes. Perhaps a partial capability could be deployed in a crisis. These what-ifs underscore that the NGAD program is not just a fighter in isolation, but a flexible program that could adapt to world events. Finally, there is a question of Boeing's execution. If Boeing rises to the challenge and delivers a superb F-47 on time, it will validate the Air Force's decision and silence the skeptics. Boeing's recent moves, reorganizing its defensive unit, hiring seasonal program managers, and partnering closely with the Air Force teams, suggests that it's taking this challenge seriously. Success could also mean Boeing becomes a frontrunner for the Navy's 6th gen fighter, potentially giving the US a unified family of F-47-based Air Force and Navy air superiority jets. On the other hand, if Boeing falters, the repercussions could be severe. A major failure might invite a program restructure or even an eventual competition do-over, although such an extreme step would only occur if things went truly off the rails. More likely, in the case of trouble, the Air Force would pour in more money or bring in partners, perhaps Northrop Grumman as a teammate, to get the program back on track because the need for the NGAD is existential. As of now, the award of the F-47 NGAD fighter to Boeing marks the dawn of a new chapter in American air power. It came after years of secret development and fervent rumor, and it sets the stage of innovations that we can only partly imagine. The coming years will reveal whether the F-47 lives up to its billing as the cornerstone of 21st century air dominance. Will Boeing prove the naysayers wrong and deliver a next-generation masterpiece on time? How will the F-47 shape tactics alongside its drone companions? And what moves will competitors like Lockheed make next? A new era has begun in the sky, one of bold ambitions, cautious optimism, and watchful eyes. And in the words of one Air Force leader with the F-47, we're going to write the next generation of modern aerial warfare. And the world is watching that story unfold. Hey, don't forget to go check out MyHeritage to start your own family tree and find out where you really come from. I've got a QR code up here in the corner, or you can click the link down in the description.